Hello everyone, welcome to the Art of Senior Fitness Program Design. We've got a couple minutes until we officially begin, but just making sure that all the channels are working. Happy Valentine's Day. All right, we are live on Facebook. Let's see about LinkedIn here. We are maybe live. Yeah, we're live on LinkedIn too. Wonderful. All right. Hello, everyone. We still have a minute to go. If you just got an alert to your phone or your computer saying Emily or Stronger You Senior Fitness is live, this is the Art of Senior Fitness Program Design Part 5. If you haven't seen the other parts, that's okay. Stick around. If you're wondering what is this, it is a multi-part series where we talk about all things to do with older adult fitness. And you don't have to necessarily be in fitness or have to be in recreation directly, but if you oversee or you support a team who do these jobs, then stick around today and you can take some information back for them. If you visit the Stronger You Senior Fitness LinkedIn and Facebook pages, you can see the previous parts. This is probably the only week where there is a little bit from last week, but we are going to review it as we jump in as well. So you might be a teeny tiny bit lost at the beginning. I'm going to try to do my best to make sure you're not, and then everything, you'll be on the same page as everyone else. And if you're wondering what's up with the angle today, in which I'm speaking to you at, we're going to talk about lower body strengthening. So for most of this presentation, this webinar, I'm going to be backing myself up and I want you to be able to see my legs. So for the first little bit here, I'm going to be looking at you kind of like this. That way I don't have to move the camera around too much. All right, so it is 12:30 Eastern. Grab your lunch, grab your coffee if you're in the Eastern provinces. If it's still morning for you, good morning, good afternoon. And we are going to get going with the Art of Senior Fitness Program Design Part 5. So as I said today, we're going to talk about lower body strengthening. And already, let's see if my slide will advance here. Perfect. So today, we're really focusing on the part of Canada's physical activity guidelines that involve the 2 days per week of muscle and bone strengthening activities for all the major muscle groups. We've talked about in a few of the past webinars that sometimes we feel like, yeah, we're moving, so we must be hitting the standard. But what I'm trying to really convey in last week's session and this week's session is that there's a very specific way for you to hit this standard, and you have to activate all the major muscle groups. So last week we did the upper body. This week we're going to do the lower body. If you missed last week's, that's okay. Feel free to go back and watch it and any of the other parts as well. And just to recap, we had this slide again last week for those of you who were with us, but why do we want to offer a strength-based program? Well, it's going to improve mobility, maintain independence, prevent injury, and it's the only thing that can help age-related decline in our muscular strength. So very naturally, we lose about 1% per year if we don't do something in order to keep that strength up. And the way to do that is through muscular strength-based classes. So we need to do more than just gentle exercise and stretching throughout the week. We need to focus in and target on the muscles that we want to keep strong and that are going to help us maintain our independence or the independence of the individuals that we serve. So I won't go through this, but just to kind of overview the muscles we're going to talk about for the front of the body, you might not recognize the names on the slides here, and that's because there are so many muscles in our lower body. We have around 600 muscles in our whole body. We have a lot of them in our lower body, but we tend to group them. So for the front of the body, we're going to talk about your quadriceps. So quadriceps are actually listed there, but you might not recognize them. We'll get into that in a moment. We're going to talk about the tibialis anterior on the front of your leg here, and one that you might not know by name, the group called the iliopsoas group. We'll talk about that group too. And then for the back of the body, we are going to talk about the hamstrings, the glutes, and the gastrocnemius. So again, on the slide, you might see a ton of names that you do not recognize. That is okay. Fear not. You will recognize the terms I'm going to use in the next slides. Now, we talked about this last week, but I want to recap it for anyone who's new this week, as well as just for those who were here last week, because it is a concept that you do have to wrap your brain around. And so this is the structure of a muscle. The top photo there is a muscle fiber. So within a muscle, like our bicep, for an example, we have all these little muscle fibers, which gives the striated or the kind of lined appearance of the muscle. And then within those muscle fibers, we have myofibrils. And the myofibril is what's sticking out there out of that top image. And the arrow pointing down to the bottom is us looking at the myofilaments. Two myofilaments, actin and myosin. And it's important to know these because of something called the sliding filament theory. And so what this theory says is when a muscle is activated, an electrical impulse is sent to your muscle saying, hey bicep, we need you to lift this bag of groceries. What's going to happen is myosin is going to bind to actin and pull it in. And we're mostly going to talk about concentric contractions today. And with a concentric contraction, we see a shortening of the muscle. So we see myosin binding to actin, pulling it in, and shortening that muscle group. Okay, so throughout today's muscles that we're going to talk about, I want you to have that theory in the back of your mind, because it's going to help you to ensure that you are engaging the muscles in an effective way, in a quality way. It's not enough just to move. We have to move with effectiveness and with quality. So this is the one I told you, the iliopsoas. Fear not if this is the point where you're thinking, okay, this is not the webinar for me on a Friday on Valentine's Day. Stick with me through this one. So the iliopsoas is actually two muscles, the iliacus and the psoas muscle. And these muscles are predominantly important for flexing the hip. So they are the muscles that help us do this, lifting that hip. They're the muscles that when we get into a car, we lift the leg up and over into a car. When we get to a curb, we need to step up onto that curb. So as you can imagine, for independence and activities of daily living, this is a really important muscle. Yet, most of us don't know what this muscle is called. Yes, we're going to talk about the quadriceps, the hamstrings, and the glutes, but I would argue that this is one of the most important muscles for maintaining independence. So really important. And if you were here last week, we talked a lot about origin and insertion. And you might be thinking, why is this important? Are we going to just go through anatomy for this whole 30 minutes? And it's important because we want to engage that muscle in an effective way. And in order to do that, we have to understand the muscle. And part of that is knowing origin and insertion. So if we look at these two muscles, we'll start with the psoas major. It inserts on the L1 to L5, the lumbar vertebrae. So that's in the spine, the lower back, as it were. And for the iliacus, it originates on the ilium. Okay, so if you kind of think about your hips, they kind of look a bit like elongated hearts. All of the different parts have different names. I'm going to try to keep this as layman terms as possible for you. But you can see in the photo there, it's kind of that top of the heart, the crest, where the iliac crest, where it originates. And wherever a muscle originates, that's kind of like the post. It's stuck there, it's anchored in, that's where it originates. And then both of these muscles insert on the femur. So the bone, the long bone in the upper leg here. And when muscles cross a joint, like they do here, between the leg and the hip, that's where the movement occurs. Okay? Still with me? If you do have any questions, feel free to put them into the comment box, the chat box, or email me afterwards. That's all fine as well. I can see LinkedIn. I'm just going to check in on Facebook and make sure we don't have any questions as of yet. Looks good. Okay, so we have the insertions up here. We have the origins down here. If we think about our sliding filament theory, when myosin binds to actin and that muscle shortens, what do you think is going to happen to that body part? Well, we're going to see it shorten and we're going to see the hip flex forward. Okay, so when we want to work these two important muscles, we have to do a movement that's going to work those muscles, that's requiring those muscles to engage. So just from a seated position, again, that's where I said I would do a lot of moving today. That's why you're kind of looking down at my legs mostly. From a chair position, lifting the knees. Also engaging through the core. We talked about the core last week, so lifting the knees from the core and also using that iliopsoas. So we kind of put them together, make the one word iliopsoas, okay? And if we look at a standing exercise that we can do, I'm going to back myself right up here. You're going to lose my head, but that's okay. Even just a simple knee lift, right? We're squeezing and we're lifting the knees up, okay? Now also, we're going to talk about this move for a few things, but a sit to stand. A sit to stand is a great way for us to work these muscles. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple moves for each of the muscle groups in order to work these muscles in a really effective way. And hi, Tammy, you've got a question there. So this isn't an intro to the Stronger You Senior Fitness certification, but we're just, every week I do a different topic, and this week we're doing an intro to lower body certification. But on that note, next week's topic is Stronger You Senior Fitness. So if you've got some questions about Stronger You Senior Fitness, what's it all about? Should I take it? Feel free to join me next week, but definitely stick around this week to learn about the lower body. So we just did a couple moves for the iliopsoas. Okay, so very important muscles. You can throw out a fancy word if you're teaching fitness right now, and you can tell your members that you're teaching with of what you're doing. All right, and now we've got the quadriceps, okay? So I told you that you would start to feel like you know what I'm talking about. So this is where that kicks in. Quadricep, quad, 4. So you won't be surprised to know that the quadricep is actually made up of 4 muscles that you'll see on the screen there. So the rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedialis. Very good. So these muscles, if we look at the rectus femoris, it's kind of the big one there, right in the center. That one is going to originate, again, if we think about the hips, we think about kind of how they're a bit of like a heart function, not the top of the heart, but the inferior iliac spine. So it's down here. And again, not super important to know the very specific area, but to kind of know the area in which we're talking so we can know where that muscle anchors and where it inserts. And then if we look at the vastus lateralis, medialis, and intermedius, they all originate on the femur, okay? So the very top of the femur bone there. And they all insert on the patella, on the knee. And again, if we think anytime a muscle crosses a joint, crosses an area, that's where we're going to see the movement. So when you have from the hip down to the knee, you have a muscle and it contracts and shortens, we're going to see a straightening of the knee. So I'm going to back myself up here again. Sorry if that chair noise is really terrible on your end of the webinar. So really easy way just to get the quadriceps only is a leg extension. Okay, so this is the best way from a seated position to really work those quadriceps. And even you right now, if you join me in doing this, if you pause, you should be able to feel those 4 muscles in your legs, and you can feel that they've changed shape, they're holding, and then when you put it down, they relax. From a standing position, we can do something like a front leg lift. If we lift that leg, we're going to be using that rectus femoris as well as the iliopsoas muscles that we just talked about. So for a lot of lower body movements, we are going to see a lot of crossover between the different muscle joints, okay? And also sit to stands, which I talked about earlier. And it's worth mentioning to note that I actually prefer sit to stands versus squats. And the reason for that is when you do a sit to stand, you truly get to work the full range of the muscles in the proper position. And just to show you what I mean by that, I'll sort of turn sideways here. You're going to lose my head, and that's okay. So when I stand up and then I slowly sit down into this chair, I finally let go of the muscles, but I'm working all through both the hamstrings and the quadriceps and the iliopsoas. If I do a squat, I'll just show you a squat, we tend to see people, knees start to go forward, and then we can't really go, depending on how good you are at squats, you can't really go too much farther than this. So I really like, especially with older adults, doing a sit to stand because it's a very functional movement. We want individuals to be able to get out of their chairs. So quadriceps working for that movement when we go on the way up and straighten the knee, and also working that iliopsoas when we sit down and we're flexing at the hips. Okay. All right, checking in on questions. We look like we're okay right now. Awesome. And that's great. Thanks, Tammy. That's excellent. Okay, moving on to the hamstrings. So another group of muscles that I'm sure you'll recognize. Maybe you didn't know that there's three hamstrings, three muscles that make up the hamstrings. The biceps femoris, the semitendinosus, and the semimembranosus. Say that 6 times fast. And they all originate at the ischial tuberosity. Okay, so again, we think about our hips as a bit of like a heart. They're at the bottom of the heart is where they originate, and then they insert on the fibula and tibia. I got all my words mixed up today. Fibula and tibia, and those are the bones, if you kind of feel in your leg here, below your knee. So they're the two bones in the lower leg. Okay. And again, if we think about what's going to happen, we have these muscles that originate at the hip, and they're going to go, down the back. We're in the back of the body now. They're going to originate underneath the hip, and they're going to originate to the bottom of, the top of the lower legs. There we go. So we're going to see that they're going to help when extending the hip back and also bending at the knee. So I'm going to stand up and show you this one here. So if we think again, we've got them kind of under your butt or inside those in the hips, if you think inside, and then we've got them attaching on the upper top of the lower legs here. When they shorten and squeeze, we're going to see two movements. We're going to see this movement because it crosses the hip and goes down to the tibia, and we're also going to see a movement of the knee because these muscles cross the knee. So of course, two movements that you can use in order to engage these muscles is going to be a back leg extension and a hamstring curl. Okay, and to add a little bit to this, if you wanted to, you could do this weighted. So putting an ankle weight, a weight that wraps around your ankle, and you could add some weight to these movements. Okay, you can also do them from a seated position. So sitting forward in your chair, you could start to tap your toe back. Okay, I know you can only see just a little bit of my legs there. Another move you can do from a seated position is with the ball. So you can start with the ball, your toe on top of the ball, and roll it out and push into the floor. And when you squeeze it in and push into the floor, that's when you're working those hamstrings. So if you were to do this movement right now, even without a ball, just kind of squeeze and lift your leg in, and you feel your hamstrings, you can feel them contracting and squeezing down there. So a very important movement for engaging through the hamstrings. Okay, now we're going to talk about the glutes. So as I said, a lot of these muscles are going to work together for a lot of the movements. We've got three gluteal muscles: gluteus maximus, the big muscle of the buttocks that is on the superficial layer, the top layer. And then we have two deep muscles under the gluteus maximus, which is the medius and the minimus. And these muscles, as you can see from the photos there, originate in the ilium and the sacrum, so parts of that kind of hips that we think about the heart there. And they're all going to insert on the femur, at all different sides of the femur, as you can see from the pictures. And as a result, they're going to move the femur in all different ways. So a few of the movements that it would be responsible for is, just like the hamstrings, helping the body to extend the leg backwards. So we're squeezing that glute, it's shortening, and we're going backwards. Another movement is abduction, so out to the side. That's when we're seeing more of that gluteus medius and minimus. And once again, you could add a ankle weight to this movement, so that way you can get a little bit more out of it. Also external rotation, so rotating the hip out. I'll face front for this. Rotating the hip out, squeezing those hips, getting all that rotation, and even a little bit of internal rotation as well with that gluteus minimus. So all of the movements of the hips, a lot of them are controlled by the gluteal muscles. And another movement I want to show you is a movement with the band. The outward movement of our body is so important as we age. We tend, as human beings, tend to get tight, really coming in. And so movements like this that help us go out and keep our bodies tall and strong is really important. So if we put the band around our legs here, start from the top, bring it up, and we do a movement like out, out, in, in. That's going to work the muscles of your hips, as well as a bunch of other little muscles that we're not going to talk about today for simplicity's sake, but really great movement to do to work those hips from a seated or a standing position. You could do that from a standing position as well. Wonderful. Now, adductors. So again, you can see a whole group of muscles that have different names. So adductor longus, magnus, and brevis, and also the gracilis and the pectineus. So these muscles, again, they all originate near the pubis and the ilium and the ischium, so the hip bone, sorry, ischium, not ilium. And they all insert right down the femurs. So just looking at this muscle, we can see that if we were to squeeze these muscles, we might see a movement inward like this. So really good for things like getting into a car, getting in and out of bed, swinging your legs. So for an older adult, using all these muscles together now, we can see we've got the iliopsoas, getting our foot in the car. We have the external rotation, using the glutes, using the the quadriceps there as well. Then bringing the other leg in, using the adductors to get ourselves out of the bed into a car. So really all these important muscles working together. And so as I said, this muscle helps to bring the legs in toward the midline of the body. And one of the movements I really like for adductors is using a ball. So just putting a ball between your knees and squeezing that ball and relax. And you know me, you know I like to make my classes fun. I never like to do just 10 repetitions of anything. So if I were to do an exercise or a combo with this ball, it's always a combination with me. I would do something like big squeeze, and then 4, 3, 2, 1. Big squeeze, 4, 3, 2, 1. I guarantee you, you do 4 sets of that at minimum, and you are going to be feeling those adductor muscles. So again, another example of a really quality movement and how we can make it nice and exciting for the older adults that we work with. Great. Now, going down to the lower leg, muscles in the lower leg. So we have the tibialis anterior. And so this muscle runs along the front of our shins. Probably the most important muscle we're going to talk about today, because this muscle is involved with falls prevention. We talked about the role of the iliopsoas muscles in lifting the knee to be able to step over things like curbs and streets and getting into cars and things like that, navigating over changes in the floor. But even more important is being able to lift your toes when you walk. And that is what the tibialis anterior does, is it inserts from the tibia, and then it kind of wraps around to the inside of the foot, so to the metatarsals. These are the muscles that kind of start to go out into our feet. And this movement is that upward movement of the toe. So I know you can't see my toe right now. You can pretend my hand is my toe, but I am moving my toe just because, yeah, of course I am. So once again, a movement you can do to help your older adults engage this muscle, I'll move back so you actually can see my toes for this one, is toe lifts. So single, single, double. I think I did this with you on day 1. Little movements like this, lift and lower, and working in both directions versus just letting the legs fall. So that's a great way to squeeze those muscles in the front. They can do it anytime, no matter what they're doing. You should be doing it as you're sitting at your desk listening to me right now. And it's going to have really great effects on the muscles and on falls prevention. Now, last muscle that we're going to talk about today is the gastrocnemius. So the gastrocnemius originates at the back of the femur and then inserts into the calcaneus. And for most of us, we would know this as kind of the heel bone, as you can see it in the photo there. And this muscle is responsible for pointing the toes or plantar flexion. Okay, so we had dorsiflexion last time. We have plantar flexion for this muscle. And many of us know calf raises. Great movement to do. Oh, you can't even see my feet, but you can see that I'm raising up. Calf raises, great movement to work on the gastrocnemius. And once again, coming down with control and lifting up, squeezing those muscles. Okay. All right. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for joining me. Feel free, go back, watch it again, take some notes. I did want to load up the slides with all the movements I was doing, but of course, you can watch it again and write them down. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Emily@StrongerYouSeniorFitness.com. We are pretty much here every single week, Art of Senior Fitness program design, so feel free to join me. And next week we'll be here, same time, same place, and we're going to talk about Stronger You Senior Fitness. So if you've been thinking about taking a senior fitness certification, you want to enhance your knowledge or expand your repertoire, then next week is going to be the week for you to learn about Stronger You Senior Fitness, how it came to be, what it is, and all of that good stuff. So join me next Friday, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, or 10:30 a.m. Mountain, or 9:30 Pacific. A very happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and we will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a great day.